Assalamu alaikum. Hello, everybody. My name is Omar Khurshid, and welcome to our very first fireside chat for Nustians USA. Fireside chat का concept ये है कि we will be bringing you interesting and very exciting interviews from people who graduated from Nust and are residing here in North America. We will be talking to them about their experiences, not just their career and work experiences, but how their experience was here in the US, what their interests are, if they have any good advice to pass on, if they have any interesting work that they are doing currently, and if they are also looking for ideas or they're looking for people to help them. So, this is the very first of the series. I have here today with me the very delightful Noman Shah. I will start off by introducing Noman. So, Noman has been involved in a lot of different things, but I will just go off in reverse chronological order. So right now, Noman is involved with ESW Capital, which is a private equity firm, but he is the senior vice president at their technical arm called Dev Factory. And before this, he was involved in a number of interesting roles. I will probably let him talk more about it. But the one that I would like to mention is that he was the co-founder of Smart Fission in Southern California, in Irvine. And they had a number of interesting networking products, including what I can tell you just off the list I know of is Shop Tracker, Real Nav Digitizer, Real Nav SDK, Show Tracker, all of these navigation systems. Noman also, interestingly, was involved in working on Wi-Fi and Bluetooth modules. And these modules actually are inside of your phones right now, in your iPhones, which is super. He also is working a lot with Raspberry Pi. And that just goes to you to show you how great of a background he is. And that's why we decided to start off this series with him. So Noman, how are you doing today? Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Omar. That was a very long introduction. Uh, Thank you so much. I just want to mention that again, this was only possible because of the great teams that I was involved in. None of these were one-person shows, so I was just lucky and fortunate enough to be involved in some of those designs and products that we all love.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. Nothing could really happen if you don't have a great set of minds working with you, right? And to that, speaking to that, how was your experience when you first came to the US and you found probably a great group of students to work with? Was that part of the reason that motivated you, even before you came to the US when you were in Pakistan? I know that you graduated from EME and you did your computer engineering, your bachelor's in computer engineering back in 1999. So were you always involved in group projects and I hope they weren't the stereotypical group projects where you were doing all of the work and everybody else was slacking. So
So,
how was your
so
experience?
we had it was interesting. One of the things is, okay, I love solving problems. That's been my guiding um, light throughout my life. Um, it doesn't matter what type of problem it is, as long as it's interesting and it needs to be solved. I love taking on those type of challenges. When I graduated, actually even before we graduated, we had a very one of the best professors that I think we've had in EME, Dr. Shraib. He's heading the CE department in EME right now, and he had a startup. At that time, he was involved in a startup called Enabling Technologies, which was later renamed as Avaz Networks. And we started, it was a group of students who were one of the first hires in that startup. And it was very interesting. We were doing voice over IP. And this was a solution before WhatsApp took over voice over IP or Vonage. In the old days, you were still using your phones and international calls were very expensive. This was the technique. We were one of the pioneers in voice over IP. Unfortunately, due to stock market crash at 9/11, we ran into funding problems. And therefore, that company got wound down. But it was a very interesting experience right out of college. Saw how, you get to see how money is getting raised. You get to deal with issues, how a small startup works, what kind of things you need to learn, ramp up. I think it was one of the best learnings that I've had in my whole life.
So that is great to know that your motivation actually began from such an early stage. I mean, because speaking from personal experience, most of my friends who have started and gone on to become entrepreneurs, they have had successes and failures, but their motivation came a lot later. And that probably has to do with the socioeconomic setup that we have back in Pakistan, where I think entrepreneurship is not very much encouraged if you have gone through a full 4-year degree. Parents and your society, they do not always encourage people to get into entrepreneurship. So it's great to know that you worked with Dr. Shoaib, and I've met him when I was there in Pakistan at one of these conferences that they used to organize in EME, and he's very inspirational. Um, so when you were working at Avaz, and I know that you mentioned that you were working on voice over IP, tell us more about, like, did you guys have to dabble with the business side of things also to, make a pitch somewhere? I
No,
don't know what.
no, that was completely technical side of things. We were working on, again, right out of college, building DSPs, algorithms, trying to figure out how to packetize voice and send it across distances. I mean, we were. You can effectively think of building a WhatsApp solution that works that works and solves the problem of having cheap voice calls across the world. I still remember, I think it was in the early 90s, I was trying to register for SAT. I wanted to take SAT scores, SAT test this is out of high school, I think, right? And there was, the World Wide Web wasn't available back then. We're talking early 90s. So
Before
the
the
only
dot-com
way,
bubble.
yeah. So the way you basically, one of the ways you went ahead and registered yourself was you actually made a phone call. So you had to go to a PCO and make an international phone call. I still remember shelling out money from it was my pocket money that went into that phone call to to register myself to have the SATs done. And it was very tough back then. I think it was a really interesting problem that we were solving. It's just that our timing was off as far as the market is concerned for voice over IP. We were a little too early.
Yeah, so you guys were basically following that principle, build it and they will come. Whereas I think some people take the opposite angle, where they say, build the business case and then the products will come. And that's very interesting. I personally, I'm a little bit more inclined towards the former one, which is you build the product. If your product is great, all the business will flow towards you. And yeah, thanks for reminding me of the good old days where you had to go to the PCO to make an international call. I remember I had cousins who used to live abroad, and sometimes when we had to call them too, you had to go there back in before like 98, 99. So when you guys eventually ventured into this, and then in Avaz as well, you guys started, who were your customers? Who were you dealing with? Were you also maybe, once you made this product, and I'm sure that the product was, amazing.
So our customers were the giant telcos, right? For example, Nortel Networks. And so we were trying to sell a solution to these telcos to offload their costs and enable basically low-cost packetized voice, and then they can choose to pass on those savings to subscribers.
Okay.
Our customers were not the end users themselves. I think that was one of the mistakes that we made. A few years later, there's a company called Vonage. I don't know if you've heard of them or not.
I've heard of Vonage.
Or Magic Jack, I think, is another company, which provided these low-cost two-line or a single line solutions that end customers could just deploy on their end, and that enabled voice over IP. I think that was a game changer. And had we focused on that market, B2C instead of going B2B, it would have been a very different story, I think.
Okay. And so when you guys did go and start selling, what was the reason why you realized that, oh, it would have been better had we gone the B2C route instead of going the B2B?
No, I'm just playing Monday night quarterback now. But yeah, I mean, this is after at that time the B2B market was very hot. There were companies being bought day in and day out. In our incubator, there was another company that was bought by Broadcom, and we were very excited about the potential opportunities that were available. It's just we lived through the dot-com bubble or the stock market crash of 9/11, and what happened ultimately was there was access to funding was very, very limited, and raising another round would have been became almost difficult. So I decided to leave that company and I went and joined a different company at that point in time.
Yeah, and that's another thing which I think we should also talk about, slightly. Actually, two good topics that you raised over there. One is the topic of venture capitalism, and the other one is you start a business and then you decide it's not going so well, and you ferry yourself back into, or you see yourself going back into a full-time job. So let's talk about venture capitalism. I know that in Pakistan, the situation now is different, but back in 1999, I'm sure maybe perhaps in large cities, metros like Karachi and Lahore, maybe the situation was different. But in the capital region and in the north of Pakistan, venture capitalism was pretty unheard of, I think. So you guys probably had some challenges there. But once you came over to the US, I think the situation here was very different. Venture capitalism is easy, it's available, accessible. So tell us about your experience in both countries.
So again, I wasn't involved in the funding or the business side of things in Avaaz or ET. The company was actually incorporated in Irvine, California, and we had a branch office in Pakistan. So the funding was, like, for example, Series A was raised actually here in US.
Okay.
Not in Pakistan. Just want to make sure we're on the same page there.
That's good. Yeah.
Yeah. So I moved as part of when I was joining the company, I had negotiated that I would be moving to the US because I actually wanted to go and do my doctorate at that point in time. And so that was part of the deal that I'd cut, that I would work and then I would go to the US and then pursue my higher education over there.
Okay. But just so I understood you correctly, you said even though you were not involved in the VC portion in Pakistan, but once you did come here and then you were working to build Smart Fission, which was different from Avaaz.
There's a gap between ET and Avaaz Networks and Smart Fission. There's a gap of almost 20 years.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So
if you want, we can skip ahead to that, or you can tell us about.
It's up to you.
So
it's up to you.
So okay. So let's talk about that then, since we're on the topic of venture capitalism. So how was your experience over here when you were founding Smart Fission? What were the gotchas or I know most of us watch Shark Tank, and I believe it was kind of like that for you too. So tell us about that.
Yeah, pretty much before starting the company, I think I pretty much watched all the episodes of Shark Tank that had aired up until that point in time. And even watched the British version, Dragon's Den, I think, if I remember correctly. And it was, you get a very different perspective. What they don't show on these shows is basically the number of startups that don't make an interesting pitch. So when you start out, you falter a lot. Your vision is still a little muddy because you don't know you don't really know what your market is. So you have this thing in your mind that, oh, I'll go and I'll ask for money and they will give me money. This is this is easy. What's so difficult about it?
Right.
And then you go in, you do your first pitch, um, and you come back and you realize this is not easy. Second time you go in and you realize again that you need to polish. You need to keep doing it, keep doing it, keep doing it, and ultimately you'll get good at it. And as time goes on, and you're trying to build your product as well, and the market is evolving, you get a better product market fit. Your value prop is clearer, and you realize what are the fundamental things that you need to focus on in order to be able to secure funding. And I think it's a very hard skill to acquire, but it's all about practice at the end of the day. There's just a few simple things that people should keep in mind. So for example, I would say the number one thing is when you're talking to investors, you need to keep the proposition value very, very simple. I think that's one of the biggest mistakes that people make, is their solution is, when they're trying to explain their solution, it's really complicated, because typically you're trying to solve a complicated problem to begin with. If it was a simple
Yeah.
problem to solve it, somebody else would have come up and solved it already. So it wouldn't be a startup, right? So it's something that you're doing which is unique. So that by definition, it's something hard. The key
That you're
is,
simplifying.
can you simplify what is the problem that is being solved? And can you simplify your answer on how you're going to go and solve it?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where people struggle the most. I know I certainly struggled trying to figure out what would be the value prop of our solution. And but once you go through this, once you go through these pitches, as I said, you get better at it. You try to hone in your value prop, and ultimately you get to you get past that point. Just I just think that the reality is a little bit different than what's shown on the TV. So people shouldn't. Um, yeah, I mean, TV
Just
is
take it
not.
for granted. Yeah.
Yeah, TV is not real life, and you just have to keep reminding yourself
And
about that.
and I think one has to, look at it from the other side too. I know you're presenting them something, but then they have some expectations and so I think you probably did a lot of homework about the people you were going to present to. Am I right?
Yeah, absolutely. You need to know. Well, you need to know, first of all, you shouldn't just ask for money from anybody, because that doesn't make any sense, right? I mean, there's good money and there's bad money, and I think if people who have watched Silicon Valley, they would understand what I'm talking about. So you need to understand the people you're asking money from are vested in things that you're going to work on, and they're going to bring value to you, not just as people who have money, but people who have connections to other resources that you need help with. So for
Mhm.
example, one of the things that we did was we're starting out very small. Nobody knows about Smart Vision, right? Nobody knows about Namancha. Who is this person? I'm
Right.
nobody, right? And we wanted to do we wanted to showcase our demo on indoor navigation. How do we do that? What's the biggest, baddest trade show in US? It's the CES, Consumer
Right.
Electronics Show,
Yeah.
and it's held in Vegas. You've got millions of people coming in, and it's a really large format, spread over the convention center itself is spread over multiple halls, multiple levels, and not only that, it, it's expanded to other hotels as well. So you've got part of Venetian, part of Aria, part of MGM. I mean, they're all
It's all over.
it's all over the place, right? How do you get the access to CES and be able to do navigation for attendees who are going to come in and do that? So one of the things we did was with ShowTracker, it's about partnering. So we partnered with Radius Networks, and we were able to get access to CES. We work with people who were on the CTS board. We brought them onto our company as well, and worked as as partners to go ahead and be able to deploy our solution onto CES and show, hey, this thing works. You've got people who can search for a booth, like, okay, you want to go to Netflix's booth. Okay, well, enter in Netflix and it will give you turn by turn guidance. And
Awesome.
it was very unique. I think there were, and once you can showcase that proof of concept, things become a lot easier, I think, compared to when you're starting from scratch.
And I think that's what, I watch Shark Tank a lot. And I think the successful startups that I've seen, they usually have a proven track record. They don't just walk in and tell you, hey, we've done this many sales, but they actually have a proven track record of success. So
But
I think
but the thing is that how do you get your first, the thing is, you have to start from zero, right? Going from 0 to 1 is the hardest thing that you will do.
Mm-hmm.
Going from 1 to 2 accounts is easier. Going from 2 to 3 accounts is easier.
Right.
So it's the first, going from 0 to 1, that's a very hard thing to do. And how do you convince somebody that you can deliver something? It's a very hard sell. So don't be afraid to partner with people, bring in people on your board. You have to be willing to give up equity in your baby. You have to be willing to work with other people. You can't go and solve this thing by yourself. Just remember that.
That's excellent advice. And I think a lot of people do not realize that, just like the people, and I know you mentioned teams in the very beginning, just like the teams that you have in your company, you have teams around the nation who are helping you build your business. And I think that is another part of the equation for success.
Yeah, I think one of this might be a little bit cultural, and I don't want to. Sometimes I think the way we're raised culturally, we are either some of us can be egoistic and have very high egos, or we shy away from asking for help. It's like, if I don't know something, I won't say it. That's not right. In the US, for example, if you don't know something, there's no shame in admitting that, okay, I don't know about this technology, but I can go and learn. None of us were born and knew all these languages and all these stacks. None of us were born that way.
Right.
We all learned it along the way, right? So be willing to learn from other people. Be willing to ask for, if you need help, ask for help. And just remember that it's a giant ecosystem that you work with. You're building a business. It's not something that you can do just by yourself.
Yeah, and I think it also, affects our people because they're not so willing to tell others about their ideas, because there is so much fear that the idea might get stolen or the business might be taken up by somebody else.
So yeah, I'll get to that. So it's a very simple thing. If you can tell somebody and you think that they will copy your idea, then it's probably not something. Any idea can be copied, but if you think that they can copy your idea in a month or 2 months time or 3 months time, it's probably not a good thing for you to build a business around it. Because if you're successful, we have these giant companies, they'll come and they'll go ahead and build the same product and they'll copy your idea and you'll be stuck high and dry. So your product has to be unique, has to be difficult for somebody to go ahead and replicate that logic or how you're solving that problem. Okay. And I know people go for patents and stuff, and that's great, but remember, patents don't solve every problem in the world. And you don't want to be caught in litigation and other things. I want people to apply for patents. I'm not trying to. Don't take this the wrong way, please. But I want to make sure that they understand that patent is not going to solve their problems. Their idea needs to be so unique and so difficult for someone else to replicate that they need to be able to sell the product, make money from that product before the competition comes in. Because remember, when you're selling something, especially if you're tackling a B2B play, it takes a longer time for you to sell in a B2B business rather than a B2C business. And it takes you even longer to get money coming for your or revenue to come in. So and it takes time to scale where the value of that where it becomes profitable or at least manageable for your startup. And it's a long process. So
It is, yeah.
it's definitely, if it's, because remember, once you have your product, you need to be able to sell it to somebody. That means you are going to be selling it to your customers, and those customers are going to be talking to other people, and they would be, even though you'll have NDAs and stuff, they may not know your secret sauce, but they will be able to, people will talk and share those ideas across. So I'm pretty much against this
Guarding.
Obviously don't spill your how you're solving the problem, or I don't think that's a good idea, but the problem that you're trying to solve, I think that should be very clear, especially when you're asking for money. And the key takeaways, the simple takeaways of how you're solving that problem, I think those need to be clearly articulated as well.
And what would you say, a lot of that, doesn't that tie into the intent of your solution? So if the intent, some people, I've always followed the advice that don't run after money, let money run after you. A lot of people that I've met at these conventions, they always talk about how much, they want to do something so that it makes them X amount of money, or it allows them to buy X amount of things. What would you say personally should be the drive, the intention for starting a business? Should it be, you want to do interesting things, you want to solve interesting problems, or you want to solve fun problems, or you want to solve problems that make you money? What should personally, do you think, be the driver?
So everybody is different. So I mean, there were reasons why I started it, and the reason I started it was because of the problem that I was facing. And I wanted to maximize the amount of time I have available for myself, and I didn't want to track around town finding items and whether they're available or not, where the items in stock or not. And that's how it basically, the idea got started for Smart Vision for indoor navigation, because GPS signals don't work indoors.
Right.
And we know where the products are located, but we don't know where you are. So how do we find where the person is? And then that person, once we found where the person is, how do we optimize the route so they can go and buy all the items they want in that trip, and minimize the amount of time they're spending going from one aisle to the next aisle and buying the items in the right order. For example, you want to buy the lightest things first rather than the heaviest things first, because you're going to be dragging that cart. Or you want to buy the colder items or refrigerated items or frozen items at the end. So you don't want to be buying ice cream right up front and going and spending 15 minutes in the store. So there are certain things that you want to optimize, along with how you're going to route the person physically on the store. So there were certain problems that I was trying to solve, and that's how I started. My advice to entrepreneurs is, or potential wannabe entrepreneurs, is this: that if you're just chasing after money, entrepreneurship is probably not the right thing. The odds of you being successful entrepreneur are less than you. I mean, if all you want to do is make money, there are other things that you can do. I would say entrepreneurship is probably the second least successful business. I think the least successful is probably the food industry. And the stories that you hear about people becoming rich overnight, they're far and few.
Yeah.
There are a lot more people who struggle while they're going through this, setting up the company and trying to make a business out of it. There's a lot of pressure involved with it. There are better ways for you to make money if that's what you're after. Now, having said that, if you're just trying to solve a problem, a research problem, it's better to go and do a PhD, or go in or figure out what you want to do an open source project or something like that. if there isn't money involved in it. The only time you want to do an entrepreneurship or start a business is if it's a problem that you're going to solve that can make money. So both things have to be valid in order for you to go and start a venture.
And that's excellent advice. I think people should, turn the problem on its head and look at like, will this thing make money, rather than, oh, I want to make this much money. So I also want to talk about marketing. I know that we spoke a little bit about that, about increasing your customer base, driving for hyper growth. Would you have advice for Nastians or Pakistani grads here going into entrepreneurship about marketing, how they should follow a marketing strategy? What are the catch 22s about marketing that they should be aware of, especially given how we have social media marketing now? You can market through so many different means. What has your journey been like, and how would you adapt yourself today to marketing?
So I think nowadays it's a little bit easier because there is data available compared to 20 years ago when you couldn't, realistically, you couldn't get the right data back. So you have different channels available. There is social media, there is, so you need to be able to market in two different ways. One is to get your customers, and the second one is to hire talent when you're starting up. And I think people forget that there's a talent part to this as well. Because again, when you're a startup, you're trying to hire the best people. And how do you have to market to the right people to hire the best talent. Why would somebody join your company and not join Google, Facebook, Amazon, or Netflix?
Right.
Right? How do you pull those people? So you need to be able to get people attracted to you on LinkedIn, for example. And then similarly, you're doing your outbound marketing to get traction on Facebook, Instagram. You're trying to, if it is a product that you're trying to launch on Kickstarter. I mean, there are different ways that some of these social media platforms are enabling interesting funding avenues as well. So it can help in both ways. But remember that you need to be driven by data and not emotions. I think one of the issues that people have is that they try to make these decisions based on emotions rather than data. So look at what's the marketing strategy that's working for you, which channel is giving you the most bang for your buck, and that's the way to or try to focus on those things. A lot of people that I've talked to don't understand what the customer acquisition cost is or what their customer acquisition cost is. I think that's when you're doing your marketing, you need to understand that if you're spending more money to acquire a customer than making out of them, that's not a business that you want to be in.
Right.
So given enough marketing budget, yes, you can sell something, but that doesn't mean that it's the right thing to sell.
Yeah, because somebody was talking to me the other day about Amazon, and they were saying that Amazon actually spends money to make money. But I always think that, in the beginning, I don't think Jeff Bezos was like thinking like that when he had a bookstore, online bookstore. He obviously made money. And then I think maybe in 2005 onwards, they started thinking that, okay, we can lose a bit of money as well. And then came in all of their excellent returns policies and so on and so forth. What I know we have about 10 or so minutes left. One thing which I wanted to talk to you about was resources that are available to people that you know of, maybe that current students, Pakistani students or Nastians here in the US can pursue and look at, because not all resources are available to everybody. Somebody might not be geographically located in a place. Somebody might not be pursuing a product that meets the venture capitalists' needs or their goals and visions. And then there are certain reasons which are beyond the context of these discussions. But are there resources that are just not available, in the public domain that people in the know of that you can talk to us about? Obviously, you don't have to share any secret knowledge with us that you don't want to, but any resources that people will benefit from.
So I'll let me turn it around. Instead of, I mean, there are, but a lot of them are paid resources, and some of those costs of acquiring those tools might be prohibitive for people in Pakistan or students who are just starting entrepreneurship. So let me list some interesting things that they can do and figure out, which are available to them for free. Except that they'll have to tweak certain things, but they can figure out some information. So the number one tool I would say for them is to look at Crunchbase. It has data for every company that's raised funding, how much money they've raised, what sector they're in. They can figure that out. D&B, Dun & Bradstreet, is another company. You can look up what the number of employees a company has in your market segment. You can figure out how much money, estimated revenue they have. So we talked about Crunchbase, we talked about Dun & Bradstreet. Another resource I would talk about is Y Combinator has their forums that are
Y Combinator is
public.
Excellent.
Yeah, so there's an internal list and there's an external list. Some of the stuff is available to public, interestingly, and the forums are available on Y Combinator, and you can see the discussions that the batch is having about, and they are on all topics from tech to marketing, and everything's available there. And I would also say that if you've got time, watch some of the stories or videos or lectures of Stanford's education entrepreneurial series. So they're all publicly available again, and they invite usually a Stanford alumni who comes in and presents how they started the business. And I've learned a lot from them. I think I've learned more from them than watching Shark Tank, because these are real stories.
Right. And I have one or two as well. I would say Product Hub. Product Hub is a great area where you can go and just look at all the new releases happening. And if not to just, look at all the awesome products that are being launched, but to get some inspiration too, because your next idea might not come to you today, tomorrow, but maybe if you go over all of these products, you may get some inspiration to improvise one of these products. And the other resource, which I'm sure, Noman, you probably know about, is Reddit. I've found so many interesting conversations on Reddit where people listing their ideas suddenly find a customer or a venture capitalist or partner. It's amazing how the world works nowadays. You are sending in one part of the world, and then you are working on something, and somebody realizes they like it. Great. So we have a couple of more minutes left now, Noman. I mean,
right. I just want to make sure that just want to tie it in. Remember how when you're talking about Reddit, you're talking about putting stuff publicly. And we just talked right at the beginning of this discussion, we talked about the fact that people like to hold on to their ideas and not share it with the world. So the Reddit is the opposite extreme of that, right?
Right.
And it's great to hear you talk about some of these examples. And I hope people understand that sharing their idea is only going to make their idea better. And you have to be smart not to share. I mean, you have to be smart in who you're sharing your idea with. Use some common sense, but I'm sure people will follow
and
that.
It's one thing which I think I've seen since I moved to the US, that people are open about so many things. They like to share. I mean, I think some of those things not need to be shared, but the American culture is very open about things. They like to share everything. Even sometimes your personal details will be available online, including who do you live with and what your salary is. And that was just crazy. But that's how, a data-driven economy works, I think, because so much data is available online. People just stop caring about these small things and they just focus on producing value. But excellent. Noman, I know we have a couple of minutes left. I just wanted to switch gears for a little second and just talk about any interesting experiences that you have had in the US. Any one single experience, crazy experience related to your business journey that you want to share with the audience?
Man, that's a that's a tough one. I don't have a particular one in mind. I mean, I'll tell you, when we were doing the CES navigation, something that I'd never thought of was the fact that we had somebody come in who couldn't see. He was visually impaired, and he had two people who were assisting him navigate the floor. And he was basically a reporter who was writing stories about all these companies that are producing tech. And when we were developing our product, we never even, unfortunately, we didn't think about these use cases. And he comes to us and he talks about the problem he has and how he has to hire two people to help him, assist him in navigating the floor. And then you suddenly realize, oh, I can solve his problem. All I need to do is make sure, instead of showing visual alerts, I put sounds in there and give the directions in audio. And there was a social element to that, which when we started out, it wasn't part of our business at all. But that was a very interesting thing that happened.
Yeah, and I'm sure it gave you so much inspiration to keep on doing what you're doing, right? Sometimes these people, they come along just to give you a little nudge that, no, what you're doing is amazing and keep doing it. So yeah, that's awesome. And Naman, thank you so much for sharing your views and your experiences with us today. I'll keep all of these in mind when I'm starting my next venture, and I'll keep you in the loop how things go. And we wish you all the best of luck as well with your current mission. I know that you mentioned that ESW Group is a private equity firm. So I'm guessing people can get in touch with you as well, or
Right.
look you guys up.
Yep, absolutely. I'm available. You can go to NOUMAAN, that's my first name, .com, and you can connect to me on LinkedIn, and I'm available on Twitter, GitHub, in any way you want to get in touch with me, or email, that's fine. We can talk. So at ESW, we basically acquire about 2 companies a week, and it's mostly an acquisition model rather than an investment model, because it's a PE firm. And we also help entrepreneurs start their new journey. So a lot of times entrepreneurs get stuck in a business that they're no longer happy with, or their passion or drive is fizzling out. But these are good buy opportunities for PE firms like ours. So we can go in, buy the company, and provide seed money for your next venture. So if you're one of those entrepreneurs, feel free to reach out to me, and we'll be happy to look and evaluate your business.
That's awesome. Well, Naman, thank you so much. I will make sure that we list your contact details in this video. And to our audience, thank you for joining us. If you like this, please leave a nice comment about us, any feedback, how we can improve. Since this was the very first fireside chat, we will now start on a series of awesome chats with our alumni in North America, and keep on bringing you worthwhile content on a regular basis. So please keep in touch. Let us know what would you like us to talk about, and if you do know of somebody or yourself that you would like to nominate to be brought onto this forum, please get in touch as well. And again, thank you so much, Naman. Take care.
Thank you.